I have people call me quite often and they say, well, I told the dog come by and it wouldn't do it. And we spent 5 minutes, arguing about it. I say, well, did you figure out why the dog thought the other way was better? Well, no, he should go the way I said.
Yeah.
Well, who knows livestock better? And it's typically not the person.
In this episode of Voices from the Field, Indiana shepherd and dog trainer Denice Rackley talks with Linda Poole, a regenerative grazing specialist with NCAT, about using herding dogs to handle livestock. A shepherd for more than 25 years, Denice handles a sizable flock with only the help of her border collies. Denice shares a wealth of information with listeners wondering whether a stock dog might be right for their farm or ranch. Let's listen.
Hi, this is Linda Poole, a regenerative grazing specialist for the National Center for Appropriate Technology. And today I'm talking with Denice Rackley, an Indiana shepherd and stock dog handler and trainer, on a subject that is pretty important to me as a shepherd. I wanted to talk with Denice about whether and how a stock dog might be beneficial to livestock operations and what information might help listeners decide whether that's something that they wanted to utilize themselves. So welcome, Denice.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. I met Denice, what is it, Denice? Like 6, 8 years ago?
I don't know, time flies.
Yeah. I was a new shepherd and working on my own and short on money, short on help, and discovered that I could find good information in the ATTRA small ruminant toolbox about how to take care of the animals. But part of the problem was getting my hands on the animals. I couldn't outsmart them and I couldn't outrun them. And if I needed to be able to process the sheep, to check for parasite loads, to check body condition scores, help with situations related to lambing, I was going to need some help. And so I looked into hiring help, and that was too expensive. I thought about getting ATV so I could at least outrun the sheep. And that was expensive, and my place is not well suited for that anyhow. There's a lot of uphill and downhill and sagebrush. And so I started looking into dogs, and my blue heeler that I love so much was great with cattle, but he was a heeler. And that meant that he went to the heels of the cattle and he moved them away from me. And I didn't need any help. The sheep were great at going away from me. I need something that would bring them back. And so I started looking into border collies and met Denice through that. So just to let everyone know, I have bought a dog from Denice, a wonderful dog, made all the difference in the world for me being able to handle my sheep. I really can't imagine shepherding anymore without a border collie beside me. And that's why I thought maybe other people would be interested in the topic too. So Denice, I wondered if you would introduce yourself, give us a little bit of information about your background, what you do and where you do this.
Sure. I'll try to keep it brief. It's a long, twisted, winding story. I began with sheep when I moved out to South Dakota. I am a vet tech and was working here locally for 8 years and had always thought I needed to be out west. So I moved out west and lived on a cattle ranch actually, and purchased a few sheep. And then once my flock got to about 50 head and I had a full-time job, it was obvious that I needed help with those sheep to get the work done efficiently and as low stress as possible for both them and me. And the boyfriend I was living with at the time was a cattle guy and really didn't appreciate sheep. So I was kind of on my own. And I thought, okay, I'll just get a dog. And I did that without knowing quite what I was getting into. I had a lot of personal experience with dogs, had worked as a veterinary technician for 8 years, as I said. And I thought, oh, sure, I can train one. So I bought a border collie pup and struggled for about 5 years and decided I'm not sure I can train one. And then I searched for some help with a South Dakota rancher that had been using stock dogs for both cattle and sheep. And then she was able to kind of get me started in the right direction and suggest I bought a trained dog. And that is what I did. And probably that dog taught me more than any person could have.
Well, I'm really impressed at the breadth of your knowledge, Denice, about the shepherding side of things and how dogs can work into it. And I know that you have a training business and have raised a lot of really good dogs that are all across the country. But I wonder if you could talk with us about what you've seen that stock dogs can do for livestock producers, and a little bit about the idea of, is there a difference between the breeds in what type of dog you might select and different types of livestock that you're going to be handling? Like I said, my healer did great for cattle, but was absolutely not what I needed for sheep. And I don't know how much of that has to do with genetics, with breed, with training. Can you talk with us about that, please?
Oh, I could spend days talking with you about that. I'm not quite sure where to start. I will say that the ability to work stock is bred into a dog. It is genetic. You couldn't prove to me otherwise if you had 1,000 years to try. The capability to read stock and to understand them and anticipate their movement is either in the dog or it's not. So those genetics are passed down from hopefully centuries of working dogs. So if you have the right tool, you can do the job. You're not going to hammer in a screw, and you're not going to take a dog that doesn't understand livestock and somehow transform it into a good stock dog, even if you're the best dog trainer in the world. Same with hunting dogs. You know, you're not going to make a terrier a gun dog, probably. Those genetics are the first thing that you need. The next is raising the dog correctly and anticipating what you're going to need to get your job done. You're going to need a dog that listens, that doesn't chase stock, that trusts you, that you have a good relationship with, and all that begins day one when you bring that dog home. So you have to raise it correctly, and then the next step is training it. Some dogs, just like people, are more skilled at certain procedures. You know, some dogs gather well, some dogs drive well, some dogs, you know, can pen livestock, some dogs can get them out of the brush. Every dog has their certain skill set that they are better at, and then the training brings out the natural instincts and helps the dog with those skills where they need help.
Have you noticed any differences in breeds of dogs? I guess this is a better way to say the question. Is there a bigger difference in the innate capabilities between breeds of dogs or within breeds of dogs? Is it kind of like heelers do this best and kelpies do this best and border collies do this best? Or is it really just the particular dog and how they are trained and how they're wired?
Unfortunately, it's both. There are certain capabilities that have been selected for in the different breeds. Heelers have the name heelers because, in fact, they heal. So, you know, the hanging tree lines tend to bite more. The border collies are a natural gathering dog. The Aussies tend to be a dog that prefers to be closer to people to work. It doesn't have scope like the border collie does to go out and gather and work far away from you. So each breed has their tendencies. Again, just like hunting dogs or scent dogs, gun dogs, but within those breeds, within a border collie, there are lines and dogs that have wider outruns, have shorter outruns, are good at driving, bite more, bite less. You can find what you're looking for, but you have to be selective and understand what in fact is genetic and what can be worked with and adjusted and what is simply in that dog.
Yeah, as a shepherd, the best way to make money is to not spend it. So it's really hard to think about coughing up the money for a well-trained dog. And yet, when I think about how much money time and effort I have misspent. I won't say I wasted it, but I will say I misspent it with dogs that didn't have that type of background. I'm sure it was expensive too. So can you tell us about kind of like the cost benefit pro con of starting with a puppy that you try to train yourself, maybe adopting a rescue dog, both of those maybe being a little less expensive, versus buying a started dog or a fully trained dog? What's your advice for how to decide what route to take if you're getting into stock dogs for the first time?
Sure. Like I said, I had assumed that I could train a dog because I'd worked with dogs professionally and enjoyed them, had them as pets, worked with people on behavioral problems. I thought, surely I can train one. But I was very wrong. First, you have to understand livestock, and a lot of people think they do, but in reality, a good dog is going to teach you things about livestock that you have overlooked and missed. Buying a pup, like I did, was a mistake, and most people try that route, and usually try that route a time or two before they admit it's not necessarily the dog, it's a lot of them that need help.
Guilty as charged.
Yes, I know, I'm raising my hand myself. Buying a pup is like the blind leading the blind. If you don't understand how to get a dog to go out and gather stock and what it's doing right, so you leave that alone, and what it's doing wrong, so you correct that, you're not going to be able to train one. So buying a pup, it takes novice handlers a lot longer with a lot more frustration and a lot less success. Some people tell me the dog shouldn't need trained. I guess that depends on your circumstance and what you actually want that dog to do. I want my dogs to be able to help me in every single situation with livestock. That means loading a trailer, gathering a field, moving, rotational grazing. That means, honestly, letting me know if something's wrong in the pasture, because I'm standing at the gate. I send them down, and if something's not right, they need to let me know. And fortunately, I have had dogs that will come to the top of the hill and look at me like, come on down here, honey. We need you. And so you have to be open to learning with them and learning from them, because they're the livestock experts.
Yep.
So buying a started dog or a trained dog definitely is the way to go. The output at the front is the least expense. You know, if you're going to buy a pup and spend 5 years not being real successful, that's 5 years basically of your time that's wasted when you could be learning beside a dog that's been there and done that.
Yeah, I think there's also a difference in the return on investment of your entire operation, in that, a dog that is very skilled at what they're doing, like you say, they read livestock better than we do. I have a strong commitment, like you do, to low stress livestock handling, and my dogs are better at that than I am. They know how to read them, and to be able to very quietly work a few little sheep out of the flock without upsetting everybody else, to be able to catch a ewe out on a lambing pasture. Everybody either has new lambs or they're going to have them pretty soon. You've got a ewe in trouble. You need to get your hands on them. A good dog is just, it's better for the sheep, as well as, saves you a bunch of frustration and running out across the pasture, frustrated, screaming, yelling, get back here, you nasty sheep. Saves you being looked upon by your neighbors as an entertainment. Well, let's see what she's doing today, how these sheep are frustrating her. But I really think that there's been a lot of value. To me, one of the big lessons with the dog that I got from you, Denice, and I know we've talked about this before, was I was so excited about having a trained border collie, and I've had stock dogs all my life, but I never had one that had all the bells and whistles, come by, wait to me, that'll do, steady, all those things. And I wanted to use the words. And so I would take Cora, that was my dog, out, and I'd want to bring the sheep in off a 100-acre pasture. And so I'd go to the gate with her, and we'd walk out and we'd look at the sheep, and then I would give her a flank, and she would stop. She'd start to go, and then she'd stop and she'd look at me as if to say, is that really what you meant to say? Because you're sending me left, and I think it's going to work a lot better if I go right. And so I had to learn a lot of humility.
Absolutely.
to do a good job with that. And it makes perfect sense once you get to it that dogs and sheep at the same level, they have a different type of instinct, a different type of intelligence than we do. Of course, they're going to be quicker and better at that. And to me, that was one of the reasons why making sure that you start with the right genetics and that you have the right training in place is an excellent start. But the next thing is training the handler. Cora trained me. She was gratefully she was forgiving. She was patient to a point.
Yeah.
and now I wish that I hadn't tried her patience for so long, but it makes me think that part of this was matching the dog to the operation to the handler. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of it. And you need someone that's not just going to sell you a dog. You need someone that's committed to the right fit and that will help you through the process. You're going to have issues. You're going to have things. Well, why didn't the dog do this when I said, I have people call me quite often and they say, well, I told the dog come by and it wouldn't do it. And we spent 5 minutes, arguing about it. I say, well, did you figure out why the dog thought the other way was better?
Yep.
Well, no, he should go the way I said.
Yeah.
Well, who knows livestock better? And it's typically not the person.
Yeah, but I paid for that dog. It should do what I said.
Yeah, there's no room for ego in stock dog handling, or I guess with livestock in general.
Yeah, I agree. How do you go about developing the instinct that you have in a dog? And what are some of the important handling tips that you would have, Denice?
Oh my goodness. I think the first thing, like I said, is raising the dog. Even if you get a 5-year-old dog, I have purchased dogs that have training, and a lot of people are worried about that dog bonding with you. That has never been a problem for me or the dogs that I've had. So it is just developing a good relationship with that dog, learning to trust each other and respect each other. And the work inside the pasture starts outside the gate. It starts at the house. If your dog's inside, it starts in the yard. You can't let the young dogs or older dogs, be on their own for 24 hours a day, getting themselves in trouble, doing whatever they want. And then all of a sudden, do what you say when you want them to work. It doesn't work that way. They're not a tractor. You can't park them in the kennel for 3 weeks and then take them out and expect them to do well for you. So you need to consider all that initially. Do you have the time for a dog? Do you have the time to learn to work with a dog? Do you have the money to invest in training for yourself? And are you willing to go get help when you need it? The sooner the better. You need to find a mentor. You cannot learn this by watching videos, by reading a book. There's just too many small things, and it's a lot about feel and learning to see what the dog is thinking. So there's tail flicks and ear movement and how his head is placed and what his eyes are saying. And there's a whole lot of small things that I watch when I train and when I help somebody try to figure out what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I answered your question because I rambled.
No, that was all tremendously useful. I wonder how trained a dog needs to be helpful, because there are farm dogs that, guard the place and make sure that the foxes don't eat the chickens, and might go out with you, and maybe all you need from them is for them not to chase your sheep. There's, on the other end of the spectrum, there's field trial dogs that, you know, are highly tuned athletes for a specific, very demanding sport. There's everything in between.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, a lot of people think their dog, I guess there's two ends of the spectrum. Either the dog should be able to do it without commands and just kind of be able to read my mind and take care of it. And then there's the people that I have to have a bunch of commands on my dog and it must do exactly what I say when I say it. I kind of am somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. One, I don't train mechanically. If the dog doesn't do what I say when I say it, then I first look to myself and wonder, maybe I ask it to do the wrong thing. Maybe, you know, the sheep were telling it something different than I saw. So when I train, I expose the dog to sheep and allow it to figure out how its movement influences the sheep. Usually I start in a smaller place like a round pen, and the dog knows its name and it knows to come to me. I don't worry about a lie down. That's where we start. We start with a good foundation of recalls and respect, and I just let the dog know when it's wrong and try to encourage it when it's right. So you build from there in small steps. So a dog that will listen, will think, and will stop when I ask it and call off can do chores with me. But I'm not going to send that dog 500 yards to go gather 1,000 sheep. You know, I'm going to start taking this little group of 10 lambs in and out of the barn, or moving these 10 lambs off the feed bunk when I put down feed. Just like learning for any person, you have to start small and build up from there.
Yeah, I've seen that as I've learned some of these things too. So that's very helpful. Another thing that I think we have to think about are, what are the actual costs? How much money is this going to cost us? And you've said that the upfront cost is the minor part, and I agree with that. And sometimes it's expenses foregone that that are part of the equation too. But what does it kind of cost a range? And I know it changes all the time and where you're at, but what are you going to have a stock dog? You know, are you going to have any facilities? And what's involved with the care and the cost with that? Your vet tech background is going to be helpful here in just, you know, what type of health care do they need?
Sure. We'll do health care first because that's easy. You know, these dogs, obviously, they need to be fit. They need a good food, higher protein, higher fat, because they're active, they're an athlete. You don't want them fat and lazy that they're going to have a heart attack out there trying to help you do something. And then, you know, all the vaccines and prevention, because they need to stay fit and healthy for you. A dog is going to work. Most of them work past 10 years old. Most of them, you know, 11, 12, some of them even 13. Granted, they're slowing down, but most of them will still be working then. So if you're going to have, say, 10 or 12 years with a dog, you want to get the most out of that dog as possible. And to do that, you need to take care of it. The other thing is they need mental exercise. Like I said, they can't be sitting in a kennel 20 hours a day because they'll drive themselves insane, or you insane by barking. They need mental and physical exercise to stay fit. These are intelligent working dogs, and they are simply not built to be left alone. They want to be with their people. They want to be active. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you know, not many of us have 10 hours of chore work to do with livestock. So that means, you know, spending some time off stock. That can be, you know, walking in the woods. That can be throwing a ball. That can be, you know, going on errands with you. But the better relationship you have, the better the work will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that it also increases just kind of, I don't know, for me, it increases my satisfaction with the whole thing. It's not just about getting a better, you know, a dog that does a better job helping me. There's just a lot of satisfaction, because the border collie, at least the one that I got from you and others that I've had, you know, they are fantastic companion animals. And I know that a lot of people do kennel their dogs part of the time. You know, they have outside places for them. I find that my dogs I live a kind of busy life. I'm up and down, but I spend a lot of time on the computer and by the desk, and my dogs want to be right here with me. And I think that helps me have the relationship with them where I can listen to them and they can listen to me.
I agree. I have 7 dogs in the house, and sometimes there are 6 under my feet when I'm riding, but I just watch when I move my chair so I don't roll over anybody. The other thing about buying stock dogs, so you have a range of choices. Buying a pup, buying a started dog, and started means anything from in the round pen going around sheep to knowing some commands and being able to help with some chores. So there's a wide range of what people call started. And then there's dogs that have experience doing chores and have the time put in where they know their sides, they know how to drive. But just because a dog works for someone else doesn't mean it'll work for you. So there's that little quandary. I don't know. So puppies in today's market, stock dogs are quite expensive. And that kind of is tied to what people will pay for a competition dog and what folks are paying through Europe for good dogs. But a puppy, I would say anywhere from probably $600 to $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, 6-8 week old pup doesn't know anything, but from good parents with some medical testing behind the parents and the litter. And then started dogs, like I said, range with a wide range of training and experience, but I will say 1,500 to 5,000 probably.
Mm-hmm.
And trained dogs, you're probably not going to find anything under 5 that is good, and they can be up to what you pay for a car.
Yeah. Well, and depending upon what you're doing with them, they can be worth every penny. Clearly from this discussion, people can tell that you and I are both really sold on how beneficial a stock dog can be to a livestock operation, whether it's cattle or sheep. I have friends who use them on ducks even. But I wonder, what about the other side? What are the challenges or potential downsides of herding dogs? Is there something in your experience, Denice, that says, I don't think this is really for you? You've already talked about you need to not treat them like a tractor. You can't just park them for 3 weeks and have them go and do what you need to do. But are there any other challenges or downsides?
I think the biggest challenge is with people not understanding that they are, 1, animals, and 2, have a mind of their own. And they don't understand how much they themselves need training. They expect a dog to be a tractor. They expect to be able to go turn it on, let it out of the kennel, go work it and put it back. It just doesn't work that way. The people that enjoy a dog and enjoy a dog's company, I would say would be the people that would benefit the most from having a stock dog. But again, like I had mentioned, a lot of instinct and matching the right breeding needs to happen for those pups to mature into a well-balanced dog. And as we talked about, there's personalities to deal with. So matching the personality you like in the dog with the work that they are most suited for with your operation is always the key to being successful.
Yeah.
But you have to commit ahead of time and be as committed to the success of you and the dog as the dog will be to your success.
Yeah, well said. Well, we're coming to the end of our time for this interview, Denice. I wondered if you had any kind of closing thoughts. Were there questions that I should have asked and I missed asking that would help people understand what stock dogs might do for them, how they might make the decision about whether to make the investment or to use those resources for something else?
I think the way to begin is to go watch dogs work. Go watch different trainers, go watch stock dog clinics. They're held throughout the country, and see for yourself the difference in the breeds and envision what you need done at home. Are you working on 5 acres and have, 10 goats? is it going to be worth it for you to invest the time and money to learn to work with a stock dog? I always tell people once they get to about 50 head, if they're alone, like you and I are, I couldn't even imagine working with livestock without a dog. Before I had sheep for maybe about 5 years before I got a dog. And I've now had dogs for 21 with livestock. Those 5 years, sheep ran into me. Sheep bolted through a door and made me fall down. Sheep stuck their head in my bucket, rain, and spilled it all over the place. Sheep, and it's frustrating, to say the least. Now, when I walk into the pasture with a dog, the sheep go, oh, look, there she is with her dog. And they have much more immediate respect for me because I have a dog next to me. Since I do not call sheep with a bucket anymore, they don't come, they aren't afraid of me. I can walk through the pasture, even I can walk through the pasture and sheep with a dog during lambing. I lamb out in the pasture. So that is not a problem, but they understand what the dog is and why it's there, and they respect its presence. So because they respect the dog, they respect me more. But you also have to respect the livestock and understand you can't let your dog be silly or be aggressive when there is absolutely no need for that. Good training, good dogs are not running, biting, chasing, they're working. And they give to livestock, and it's all pressure and release, a lot like it would be when you develop your own low stress management skills. The dogs are the same way. They work by understanding that pressure and release is what moves livestock.
Yep. Well, I don't think I have much to add to that, Denice. I think this has been a wonderful introduction to the use of stock dogs, and I wish this podcast would have been available when I was getting started, so I would have made a better decision instead of just thinking, well, my healer can't do it, so therefore dogs can't do it. I couldn't have sheep now without a border collie. I have to have my guard dogs because I live in a lot of predators, and I really couldn't do it without a herding dog trying to manage a few hundred sheep on my own. So I want to say thank you for the time that you spent with us here and for the work that you do to produce some good stock dogs for everyone. And with that, I'll talk to you again soon, Denice.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at attra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Rich Myers. ATTRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATTRA Sustainable Agriculture program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.